You're a philosopher. Did you know that? My energetic and articulate guest for this podcast, Cristina DiGiacomo, will prove it to you. And it's already important, actually essential, for us to understand that philosophy is our way of perceiving and acting in the world. That words are the way we express how and what we're thinking, how we see the world. And that these words, these definitions, then form our world. Cristina DiGiacomo was in corporate America, but when she found Socrates, when she found philosophy, it healed and focused her life, and she realized how it can do it for others too, and she's acted on it. She provides us a powerful and practical route to thinking about how we think, talking about how we talk, and learning about how we learn and teach. So, come on in as a philosopher yourself. Cristina DiGiacomo is excited to hold up a mirror to what we say, what we believe, and how we make our way in our lives. Enjoy the podcast.
I'm Norah Jones. Welcome to It's About Language. This podcast connects language and culture to life, learning, and hope. You'll experience insightful conversations with creative leaders in the fields of education, business, arts, and science. My guests shed light on the impact of language and culture on individuals and society as they share their stories and experiences. You'll be informed and inspired as we explore how language and culture make us human and bring hope in the midst of a challenging world.
I'm excited to talk to an official, no kidding, professional philosopher, because philosophy, it strikes me, is all about words and all about living life in certain ways, and that speaks about culture. How is philosophy connected in what you do with the way that, I would say, everyday people live their words and cultures?
Hi, Nora. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, and hello to all the listeners out there. Well, let's start with just the essence of philosophy and its purpose. Philosophy is really meant to be a guide to living well. I think a lot of the guidance that we've gotten over the past 3,500 years has all been with this one idea of helping us navigate the world, navigate ourselves, understand our reality, and so on. Through that, we learn about the ways that are helpful, that increase the peace in us, that increase our happiness, that help solidify relationships, that give us purpose, and all those other things that we want to be in the world. And philosophy also provides us with the language around how to think about these things and how to think about ourselves. Philosophers can be very poetic and they can be very romantic. And the one thing that philosophy also does is make very clear this guidance through the right use of language. For example, Emerson says, insist on yourself, never imitate. And I find that really way more powerful than don't be like anybody else. When you hear this guidance in a lot of ways, there's a power to it, there's a source to it. There's an intention behind it, cadence of it, that I feel can be really powerful if people were to access this kind of language. Now, make no mistake about it, a lot of people seem to think that philosophy is just a bunch of words and it's just all thinking and not doing. I'm here to debunk all of that. I feel that it is expressed in words in a way that is meant to inspire us and is meant to get us to think, and it's meant to get us to stop for a moment and really consider and be more thoughtful about our lives.
Such a powerful beginning, Cristina. Thank you. And it's interesting because some of us have a personality where we feel as if we are indeed wanting to touch on life from a philosophical point of view, that we are making decisions that have a basis in some kind of a belief system that we try to articulate. Yet in many cases, people think, including in educational settings and in work settings, that words and cultures are fairly concrete, not so in depth with some of the things that the word philosophy, this love of wisdom, would imply. You're bridging those two reactions, I presume.
Yes, I mean, I'm actually really trying to make philosophy accessible in the way that it was intended.
Hmm.
Philosophy was really meant for us. It was meant for everyone. It was self-help before self-help ever existed. In ancient times, the philosophers acted as coaches, guide, wise soothsayers, sages. They were the spiritual leaders of their communities and of their societies. They whispered in the ears of kings. They had a very significant role to play and offered that kind of instruction in a very real way.
Hmm.
Socrates was a man of the people. He was out there, rolling up his sleeves and speaking to everyday people about how to live a good life. Somewhere along the way, all due respect to the academic institutions that have kept philosophy alive, unfortunately, it also walled philosophy off for a lot of people. What I'm trying to do, and there are others that are doing great work in this vein, is to bring philosophy back to what it was originally intended for, which was for the people, um, to give them this guidance and make creating that bridge between philosophical thinking and everyday situations. There's definitely a connection. We think about something and then we either do it, or we think about doing it, or we don't do it and then think about the fact that we're not doing it. I mean, there's so many
Hmm.
other, other ways
Yeah.
that this manifests, but I think you get the picture.
I sure do. And it's interesting because as you were talking, I had an image of a former student of mine in upper level Spanish who was an exchange student from, in this case, Colombia. And in the Colombian schools that he went to, philosophy was an annual course. And when he came to my class, his depth of addressing issues, of asking questions, of learning and applying new information to his life was extraordinarily more profound. I know he was also a very intelligent person. He showed up as an exchange student. Part there that was just about him. Philosophy annually was part of the conversation that we had as a class. There is a practical application to that, isn't there, Christina?
Absolutely. I really feel that we are philosophical and practice philosophy and we don't even realize it. There's all of the norms in terms of how we interact with each other, the things that we think that are good ways of interacting with each other is all rooted in philosophy. Societies and how people are governed is rooted in philosophy. There are big, big things that our way of life is predicated on, that is all rooted in philosophy. And a lot of times we don't even know it. I mean, think about the handshake, right?
Right?
The handshake, was invented in 5th century BC in ancient Greece as a way for people to greet each other and showing a sign of peace that they weren't armed,
Uh huh.
and that was rooted in a tradition of openness and greeting and welcoming and inclusion. We may be, thinking about doing philosophy and not realizing it. Now, why I think it's important to call out philosophy is because a lot of times we tend to dilute these norms and these ideas without really acknowledging the roots. And the roots are where the real power is. That's why your student seemed to be able to be sharper or perhaps more thoughtful or perhaps grasping ideas better, is because he was, part of that and the way he approached life was constantly being introduced to him on a yearly basis and reinforced in him on a yearly basis. And so, I feel that philosophy is important, and I do believe that it has a practical idea, and people are closer to it than they may think. Aristotle believed that we are all innately wise, that we are wise already. And I don't know if many people understand that or realize that. Yeah, we're closer to philosophy than we may think.
What a fascinating concept. Again, people could look at themselves and say, I am already wise. This is a profound concept.
As a career educator and certified Gallup Strengths Coach, I engage with you and your team to bring energy, focus, and breakthroughs to all you do. Fluency Consulting provides workshops, presentations, talks, and team building events for K-16 educators and education-oriented organizations and businesses. Get energized, experience new insights, pathways, and perspectives. For more information, see our show notes or go to fluency.consulting.com.
Let's indeed take a look at how you propose, how you act to connect people with this underlying wisdom that they have that they may not have named. Both from the point of view of you have an actual a website that is on my website so that people can connect with it, the Philosophy for Success. You have the book that you are providing. As a matter of fact, you provided at a discount after this podcast, for which I thank you. That information is also on my website. How then you bring that awareness and bridge that into action for people that are adults and also for learners, for young people to grow them. What are some of the very specific ways you do it? Perhaps I'm hearkening back here to the inspiration you got from Socrates. Take it as you will.
Yeah, I do have several tools that I pull from, but the one that I feel has been the most powerful tool for me and for the people that I work with, and I think would be very useful for learners and even young people, is the practice of everything and everyone that's in front of you is your teacher. And this is an idea and a belief that Socrates held dear. He said that he knew that he was not wise, and that's what made him a wise man. And essentially, right. So the story behind that, it really goes to when he was accused and basically sentenced to death by the Athenian Senate for going around and teaching the youth of Athens about philosophy. They put him up against other philosophers and poets and bards who, also talked about wisdom. And his argument was that they were not wise because they claimed that they were wise. And the only way to access wisdom or be wise is to know that you are not, and therefore question everything, and therefore be in a space of not knowing. For when you are in a space of not knowing, that is when you can really truly know something.
Wow.
And yes, it's very powerful and really a central value in my work. And so that's where he really came up, and what has lasted the test of time is the Socratic dialectic or the Socratic dialogue, which is essentially asking questions to reveal the truth of something, whether it's the truth of a situation or the truth of another person or helping another person to, get to the truth of themselves. He believed that life was all about self-examination and that the unexamined life was not worth living. And so I bring that into practical term with myself and with others. In front of you is your teacher, so that, when we're faced with situations that are challenging, or someone has, wronged us, or something, didn't go our way, or we're struggling with a challenge or a question, to simply say, everything and everyone that's in front of me is my teacher, puts you in a frame of mind of asking questions about that situation and what you can learn from it, as opposed to being in the frame of mind of, I know the answer, or, I know what happened, because you can't always really know. And if you think that you know, that doesn't make you wise.
Beautifully said. And I'm going to actually ask you to flip kind of the attitude with regard then to how we have organized society. Young people are in schools where they listen to one teacher. Now, I'm overstating it because teachers that are both well trained and also understand the nature of learning and humanity will make sure that students cooperate and talk to one another and learn from each other. But the organizational pattern tends to be bringing in a group of people to listen to one person. Jobs have the manager who is in charge of things and may or may not open the experience up to people doing collaborative work well. How does the Socratic insight that you bring, that the Socratic approach that you have spoken of here, how can it apply to a society that is organized in this way? Or am I overstating it?
No, you bring up a valid point in terms of, looking at, everyone and everything that's in front of you as your teacher being sort of a mandate, meaning having to sort of submit to the authority in the room. And I get that. However, the notion of asking the question still rings true. So again, we're getting into issues of power dynamics here. But if you look at what Socrates was really trying to show us, is that you can ask questions without actually raising the ire of in the power dynamic. That is actually the way to establish a dialogue, as opposed to passively sitting back and taking in information, or openly challenging someone to where they then no longer want to have a dialogue with you, right? That's what
Yes.
makes the Socratic dialogue so brilliant, is that it is still a mechanism for two people to get to the truth. There's usually three ways of a conversation. Dominance dynamic, which is a person who does not really care about your reaction or your opinion, or your point of view in the conversation.
Okay.
Then there's the debate mode, or the debate dynamic, which is still two people trying to impose their opinion on the other. And then there's the third mode of conversation, which is the dialogue, which is the Socratic dialectic, which is two people asking each other questions with the sole aim to discover the truth in that conversation, the truth about each other, the truth about the situation. And it's a back and forth that is open and predicated on questions that are not meant to subvert the other person's point of view, or opinions that are meant to minimize the other person's point of view. So a student faced with a teacher can ask questions. A person who is in a dynamic with a manager can ask questions. You still have that right. We all have the capacity to ask questions.
And to receive the answers.
And to receive the answers.
And to ask follow-up questions, to not take the answer at face value. Is that part of this dialectic?
Absolutely. The thing is that when we feel shut down, right? When we ask a question and we feel shut down or shut out of the process, that keeps us from achieving a level of self-knowledge. Now, there's a little bit of an accountability piece here too, which is what can I learn about my accountability of in a particular situation or in a particular dynamic? A lot of times we get so caught up in our own point of view that we completely don't realize our hand in a situation or our hand in a relationship, right? Because we don't
Yes.
we don't see ourselves truly. Those follow-up questions or the asking of questions and being open to the answers is the notion of everyone that's in front of you is your teacher because you're learning about yourself in the process.
In your work, how do you train people to begin to think in this way, to begin to approach this openness, this change of approach that does not just have the answer given by the answer person?
So the first, I mean, it's a practice. It's a series of practices. It's work. Like it's actual
Yeah,
work. It's
yeah.
being observant of how you go about your day and noting your observations without judgment, you know. And so it's really a process of observation, letting the observation do the work, and really teaching people that there's so many opportunities around them every single minute to learn about yourself,
So,
every single minute. And so what I do is I train people to be more observant of those things
ah,
and then support their process with philosophical ideas and concepts that will help them in those unique situations because there's a philosophy for everything. There's a philosophy for how to deal with the grumpy coworker. There's a philosophy for how to deal with procrastination. There's a philosophy to deal with, getting things done. There's a philosophy for everything. So, depending on that person's unique challenges, I curate philosophies specific to what they may be going through. But what it really comes down to is helping people be more aware and observant of their actions and the actions of others, and then having a discussion on what they saw.
wow. So everybody can be a philosopher.
Actually, yes. So that's one of the myths that I talk about. There's three myths about philosophy. The first is that philosophy is for the privileged few. That's not true.
Okay.
Everyone is a philosopher, and it goes back to the capacity to ask a question. Nora, have you ever asked a question about what you're here to do?
Yes.
Boom, you're a philosopher,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So we are all born with the ability to ask a question. Philosophy is predicated on asking questions about our lives. So therefore, everyone is a philosopher. So that's myth number one, busted. The second is that you have to be like super smart or super introspective to understand philosophy. Once again, not true. There were a lot of philosophers who really worked hard and were very thoughtful about how to make their ideas accessible to people.
Hmm.
And like I said, academia has walled off philosophy, but if you actually really read the original texts from some of the philosophers, they're actually quite beautiful and mind blowing and very accessible. So, philosophy, you don't have to be smart. You don't have to, you just have to have an open mind. So, myth
Okay.
number two,
All right.
busted.
Busted.
Myth number busted. Myth number three is that philosophy is all thinking. It's all just a bunch of thinking and no doing. Once again, not true. Like, what is the use of thinking if you're not going to do anything about the thoughts that you have?
Oh,
And
ouch.
so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Ouch.
and
Ouch.
and so philosophy wasn't meant for us to just think. It was meant for us to take the thoughts and thoughtfulness that we got from philosophy and go out in the world and do something about it. Philosophers dedicated their lives, rolled up their sleeves. Some of them gave their lives and faced ridicule and exile in order to bring these ideas to us, and they did it with, with a good spirit, and they wanted to make change and help us. So philosophy is a lot about action and being
Hmm.
active in the world. So those are the three myths.
That's
Busted.
You got them. You got them. That's awesome. I mean, it makes everything accessible. Christina, your own background. How did you come to this? In what way can we consider you to be exceptional as far as your background? What did you bring to this? Or do you have the kind of background where people can say, I can relate to that. I could come into this as well.
The thing is, Nora, I'm not exceptional. 10 years ago, 11 years ago was, anxiety addled executive working her tushy off for, and not feeling valued or acknowledged, and really, quite frankly, having an existential crisis
Hmm.
on so many levels, and all the things that kind of came with it. Unhealthy, just really in bad shape. I was in really bad shape. I decided I really needed something outside of the day to day, and I would have taken a class in, I don't know, underwater basket weaving, to help me get out of this dread that I had, that I experienced on a daily basis. And so I saw an advertisement for adult education courses in philosophy, and something about it spoke to me. I've always been kind of a thoughtful person and curious person, and somehow, this idea of taking a philosophy course sort of resonated with me. And I did. I took this intro course and realized this is helping me. And over the course of several years, I would take what I was learning in philosophy and actually applying it to the challenges that I was having. And it worked. It
Wow.
helped. It helped me cope. It helped me deal. It helped me, realize that there was more to life than the way I was living it. And it gave me hope and just all these really wonderful things. Um, it turns out that I also, along the way, really cared about what was going on with people in their working lives, because I had had and was having horrific experiences in my work life. And so I got a master's degree in organizational change management. And so, and that taught me a lot about, the working world, not only from, just my personal experiences, but also like how to actually make things better from a systemic point of view.
Wow.
And so at some point a couple of years ago, I realized I wanted to make philosophy my vocation. And all I ended up doing was taking my passion for it, my experiences in using it to help myself, and my understanding of the challenges and tribulations that people experience in the working world. And then I combined all those three things to the work that I'm doing now. But I'm not that exceptional. I just sort of figured out how to sort of intersect these three things, to do something to help people. But I will say the reason why I'm doing it
Mm-hmm.
and where I am is
Mm-hmm.
because I lead a philosophical life.
Interesting. So that power of philosophy, in fact, has made it possible for you to empower others for a philosophical consideration in their own lives. In action. That's the thing you keep bringing back, in action. Christina, you used a word that touched me deeply as you were speaking. Dread. Dread. There's an action element of taking a look at that which we dread. I think about how much emotional content there is right now in the cultures around the world, how much struggle there is as people look into their lives now and potentially into the future. Not all, of course, But it strikes me that one of the things that you said at the beginning about that philosophy is a guide to living well, not just thinking well, but living well, and that the nature of the dread that people may be facing at this challenging time on our planet, that philosophy is needed more than ever.
I believe so. I'm making it my mission, to get people to understand how, how philosophy is relevant, and how it can help. And even if you look at the word dread and, as you say, sort of the emotions around it, this is a very paralyzing feeling. And uh, the philosophical and more specifically Stoic view of dread and the feelings around it is that to feel this way or to identify with with dread, to identify with it, to attach to it, is what is causing the dread.
Hmm. Wow.
And that's the power of philosophy. Because if I were to work with someone who is in that paralyzing feeling of dread, my guidance to them and the practices I would give them is to acknowledge the dread is there, but to not identify with it and perpetuate it so as to make everything else feel more dreadful. And so that was how I got out of it. That's how I was able to solve my feelings of dread, was to recognize that that only I could change it, and only the way I thought about it would be able to change it.
Powerful commentary on the nature of how we face, again, the words in our lives, the labels for the reality that we perceive. And I keep going back to the idea that when we put it all together, it's a culture in which we as individuals may live, a culture of dread, for example, a culture of guilt. And that facing those words, unpacking those words from a philosophical viewpoint, and with that help, can really transform this powerful work, Cristina.
Thank you.
Powerful work in your life, powerful work for others' lives. This has been absolutely fascinating. I'm hoping that indeed that those who are searching for what words and understanding can do in their lives, very practical applications in education, in business, in life, will take a look at what you offer. We'll take a look at your website. We'll take a look at that book. And I'm going to turn to you now and say, this is a conversation I'd love to continue for a long time, but on behalf of the podcast audience right now, if you turn to them, what's the very last thing that you want to be sure that they heard or been warned about or invited to do?
You are a philosopher.
That's it.
That's it.
And because you are a philosopher,
you have the power to live well, and you are in control. The way that you approach life is all about the way you think about it.
Thank you so much. That clarity and succinctness and joy that you brought into your life and that you are bringing to others, let me express my appreciation for that and my joy in that. Thanks, Cristina.
Thank you, Norah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, family, and colleagues. Let's continue the conversation. Be sure to check out my website, fluencyonline.com, to learn more about our guests and to check out the resources and information they've shared with us there. I have other ideas, resources, and opportunities there for you too. Again, thanks so much for listening, and until next time.